There are those characters who get put so thoroughly through the ringer that survival seems like a slimmest of possibilities, yet they somehow make it to the finish line with their hearts still beating against tremendous, even overwhelming odds. And that is ultimately the case with these 10 horror movie characters, who despite being subject to horrendous torture, both physical and mental, were somehow still alive at the end. I'm Gareth, this is What Culture Horror, and here are 10 horror movie characters who barely survived. Number 10, Anna, Martyrs. Martyrs is one of the most downright unhinged horror movies of the last 20 years, and asks the audience to consider what survival really means anyway. Though protagonist Anna does make it to the end of the movie alive, it's fair to consider whether death would have actually offered her some sweet release. You see, Anna ends up taken hostage by a secret society who are attempting to discover the nature of the afterlife through the use of quote-unquote martyrs. That is, torturing people to the brink of death, believing that such pain will allow them to envisage what lies beyond the mortal realm. Anna is their latest subject then, and after being summarily abused, she ends up being surgically flayed. In the final scene, Anna is catatonic, but still very much alive, and though the long-term prognosis for a skinned human being is not good at all, she is still hanging in there the last time we see her. Anyway, moving on. Number 9, Wallace Brighton, Tusk. Continuing this thread of what counts as survival, really, we have Kevin Smith's Tusk, in which obnoxious podcaster Wallace Brighton is drugged and taken hostage by the deranged Howard Howe. From here, Howe progressively mutilates Wallace in order to transform him into a human walrus, amputating his legs, cutting out his tongue, and sewing him into a walrus costume made of human skin. As you do. Wallace is also psychologically abused in order to make him believe that he is actually a walrus. And though Wallace eventually kills Howard by impaling him on his tusks, it's not much of a happy ending for him. Ultimately, Wallace is damaged beyond repair and still living as a walrus as the end credits roll, now residing in a wildlife sanctuary. Worse still, the ending implies that some vestige of Wallace's prior humanity remains trapped in his shattered psyche. So yes, Wallace technically survived, but is it even really Wallace as we know him by the end? Number 8, Brenda Bates, Urban Legend. This list is primarily concerned with horror movie victims, because there's nothing remotely surprising about supernatural killers like Michael Myers surviving to the end. It's kind of what they do. But Urban Legend's serial killer Brenda Bates is a rare flesh and blood murderer who actually survives to the credits, albeit only just. Brenda takes a goddamn pasting in the movie's climax, being shot, falling out of a window, and then getting ejected through the windshield of a car and falling about 30 feet into the river below. There's not really any doubt that Brenda's a goner, and yet the film's sequel-baiting final scene reveals that she somehow dusted herself off, pieced herself back together, and has relocated her murderous antics to another college. Because, yeah, sure, why not? And while Brenda was definitely a fun villain who absolutely could have driven her own slasher franchise, sadly little was done with her after this, only showing up for a seconds-long cameo at the end of sequel Urban Legend's final cut. Number 7, Shigeharu Ayama, Audition. Takashi Miike's Audition follows Shigeharu Ayama, a middle-aged widower who seeks out a new wife and embarks on a relationship with an alluring new prospect, Asami. However, Asami is eventually revealed to be a sadistic, jealously psychopathic serial killer who ends up drugging Shigeharu and injecting him with a paralytic agent, leaving him unable to fight back against her while fully conscious of what she does to him. And what does she do? As nobody who's ever seen Audition can surely forget, Asami begins by torturing him with acupuncture needles before methodically amputating his left foot with a wire saw. Yeesh. Shigeharu is only saved from being enslaved and presumably later murdered by Asami by his son, Shigehiko, who intervenes, attacks Asami, and kicks her down the stairs, killing her. So were it not for his son's timely save, Shigeharu would have been just another one of Asami's many victims. Number 6, Miss Burke, The Faculty. Right, so all of the characters on this list were resilient in one way or another, but did any of the others manage to survive being decapitated decapitated? Just walk it off, right? In Robert Rodriguez's ludicrously entertaining The Faculty, high school teacher Miss Burke is among the school's many faculty members who've become controlled by an alien parasite. This leads to a brutal third act confrontation where Burke attacks student Zeke in his car, causing him to crash it, in turn propelling her through the windshield. In the aftermath, we see that the crash decapitated Miss Burke, whose head is now scuttling around with alien tentacles. Because, why the hell not? Though the head manages to reattach itself to Burke's body a few moments later, that's still one hell of a traumatic injury for anyone to live through. Yet Miss Burke is in luck, as once the alien queen Meribeth is defeated, everyone under her parasitic control reverts to normal. And so the final scene shows Miss Burke cheering on Zeke as he plays football, having inexplicably survived having her head temporarily parted from her body. Just a minor inconvenience, right? Apparently so. If you're having fun looking at these characters in horror movies that barely survive the whole thing, then hit that subscribe button below and you'll get even more of these fantastic What Culture horror videos on your screen. Number 5, Britt and Malik, Saw 5. Though the overwhelming majority of Jigsaw's test subjects do not survive the traps they're placed within, Saw 5 had not one, but 2 characters survive their final test. Lucky them. Britt and Malik, the 2 remaining members of their initial group of 5, are left with one last grueling task to secure their freedom. They must each spill 5 pints of their own blood into a beaker for a grand total of 10 pints. Not the nice pints you have on a Saturday night. But anyway, the human body contains about 10 pints of blood, and if you know much about biology at all, you'll appreciate that losing half your total blood volume is extremely dicey. In real life, losing more than 40% of your blood is almost always fatal. And so the fact that Britt and Malik both survive their crimson sacrifice is nothing short of a damn miracle. We see Malik again as part of the Jigsaw survivors self-help group in Saw 3D, while Britt isn't ever seen again, though Saw 5's ending absolutely implies that they both made it out alive. Bloody good for them. Number 4, Noriko, Godzilla Minus One. Now, Godzilla Minus One is a mostly fantastic movie, which stretches its own internal credibility to near snapping point at the very end, when it's revealed that protagonist Koichi Shikishima's girlfriend Noriko has returned from decisive death. Midway through the movie, Noriko appears to perish when Godzilla fires his atomic breath upon Ginza, totally annihilating the area. We straight up see Noriko get flung through the air by the strength of the blast, enough that it seems highly unlikely she could withstand such an impact. And yet, in the film's final scene, Shikishima learns that Noriko indeed survived the attack and finds her in hospital, where, save for a bandage on her head, she's looking in shockingly good shape. While Noriko's survival was certainly a much-needed feel-good moment, it did come at the expense of the film's overall dramatic plausibility. A sentimental indulgence we'll allow because the rest of the movie is so damn good. If you've not watched it yet, do yourself a favor and get it in your eyeballs. That's what we do when we watch movies, right? Number 3, Brent, The Loved Ones. The criminally underappreciated horror comedy The Loved Ones follows Brent, a teenage boy who is preyed upon by Lola, a fellow student with some seriously unhinged romantic designs on him. When Brent rejects her invitation to the school formal, she teams up with her dad, Eric, to kidnap Brent and subject him to a litany of squirm-inducing torture. This begins where most torture might end, with Lola injecting Brent's voice box with bleach, obliterating his vocal cords and leaving him unable to scream for help. From there, Brent is psychologically abused, has his feet pinned to the floor with knives after trying to escape, and has Lola's initials branded onto his chest. Lovely. But worst of all, yep, worse than all that, Lola drills a hole into Brent's skull with the intent of lobotomizing him by pouring boiling water into said hole. A fate he mercifully manages to avoid by fighting back and eventually killing Lola and Eric. But only just. Number 2, Jesse Burlingame, Gerald's Game. Mike Flanagan's brilliant adaptation of Stephen King's Gerald's Game revolves around Jesse Burlingame, a woman who heads to a remote cabin for a romantic getaway with her husband, Gerald. However, after Gerald handcuffs Jesse to the bed as part of a sex game, he dies from a heart attack, leaving Jessie trapped and unable to summon help. And boy, does Jessie get put through the ringer in order to earn her freedom or what. Beyond being taunted by hallucinations, the film's most infamous, nauseating moment occurs when Jessie cuts her own wrist and degloves her hand in order to slip free from the cuffs. Yep, do not watch that on a full stomach. But that's not quite the end of Jessie's ordeal. No, no, no. Even once she flees in her car, she hallucinates the terrifying Moonlight Man in the back seat, causing her to crash the vehicle. Jessie does, however, survive the accident, and though she ultimately triumphs over her traumatic past, she's clearly never going to be quite the same again after this dirty weekend gone wrong. Number 1, Chad Meeks Martin, Scream 6. It was a genuinely pleasant surprise to see Randy Meeks' nephew, Chad, survive to the end of the 5th Scream film, especially after being attacked by Ghostface and stabbed a whopping total of 7 times in the back, stomach, and leg. Though Chad became an instant fan favorite character, the filmmakers took his inexplicable survival ability to downright cartoonish lengths in Scream 6. In the slasher sequel's climax, Chad is basically turned into a pincushion by 2 of the Ghostface killers. Now, it isn't clear precisely how many times he's knifed, but even a conservative estimate puts it at well over a dozen cuts. Chad seems deader than dead. That is, until the very end of the movie shows him being once again wheeled out on a stretcher, as Sam asks the very same question that the audience is likely thinking. How the hell are you alive? Even Ride or Die Chad fans had to admit that this was absurd, even for Scream standards. And so it'll be interesting to see whether Chad goes for the hat-trick in Scream 7, or his luck finally runs out. We'll just have to wait and see, eh? Now continue your YouTube journey with What Culture Horror by tapping on another frightening video right here. You're gonna have a scream, haha.